You open your eyes. It's deafeningly loud. There's lights flashing everywhere. Everybody you know is standing there screaming at you. Don't scream or run away. It's not a nightmare. You're on stage. Today we're going to talk a little bit about stage presence. Welcome back to the From Classical to Radical series, where we're trying to train classically trained musicians how to easily enter the world of amplified music. Rock and roll is very different from classical music. You obviously know that, or you wouldn't be here. Yes, we have the same 12 notes in pop music that Beethoven used, but there's a lot of differences, right? One of the biggest differences is not musical at all. It's atmospheric. The entire atmosphere around a classical music stage is designed to minimize distractions. The rock stage seems to be sort of pushed in the entire opposite direction. Seems to be set up to maximize distractions. We got loud crowds, we got flashing lights, there's smoke machines, there's tons of movement around the stage, distractions, right? So in order to fit in, you're going to need to know how to act. Standing there looking terrified is probably not the right answer. First things first, playing rock and roll is fun. You don't have to be a good actor, just have fun. Have fun and it's going to look like you're having fun. How do we do that? Well, you might be a shy person who's not really big on demonstrative behavior. Bad news, that's going to be expected. Good news, you're not the only introvert in the music business. Beyonce, one of the biggest stars in pop music. There are no bigger stars on the planet right now than Beyonce. She's a bit of a private person. So being a megastar is a little outside of her comfort zone. So she has created this alter ego named Sasha Fierce. And when she steps on stage, she is no longer Beyonce in her own mind. She's Sasha. And Sasha is this character who is confident, she's self-assured, she's outgoing, she's highly energetic, she doesn't make mistakes, she's just really engaging. And that way, Beyonce can sort of protect her inner self a little bit while still putting on a great show for the people out there. So that might be one thing to think about. You're probably going to need a few more application points though. So here's a few. Eye contact is a big one. In classical music, you almost never make eye contact with your crowd, right? In pop rock settings, it would be very unusual for a performer to not make eye contact with the crowd. You want to look at people. You want to be engaged. You want to be energetic. Make eye contact, smile, and then look at somebody else. People want to feel like they're part of the show, but they don't want to feel like they're being creepered a little bit, right? So engage with a person over here, smile at them, whatever, have a small interaction, and then look over here. Have an engagement with this person, smile, interact, whatever. And it doesn't, you don't want this to be robotic, but that's just going to be sort of part of what you're doing. With any luck, there's going to be enough people at your gig that you can sort of look from person to person as you're going. You're going to engage with some people in your band. But throughout the night, just make sure that you're intentionally engaging some people that are in a crowd in front of you. Before you get on stage, be aware that you're not going to be able to see very far. If your stage lights are worth much at all, it's going to be sort of like driving towards somebody who's got their high beams on. You can see, on my stage, you can see maybe 6 to 10 feet into the crowd, and everything past that's just sort of black. So you want to make eye contact with the people that you can see, and then just give some glances into this great unknown every now and then. The people that are out there are not aware that you can't see them. Just sort of, glance out there every now and then, look around, as you can sort of assume that they're looking at you, so you can try to look back. You want to move around a little bit on stage. Pretend that there's paint on the bottom of your shoes, and you're trying to get paint in as many places as possible on stage. Sort of everybody's going to have their space on stage, right? This is where we're going to start out playing. If you have a pedal board, that's where your pedal board's going to be. If you have a wedge, that's where your wedge is going to be, a microphone, whatever. But if you don't have a reason to be in that spot, you should be somewhere else, okay? And some of this depends on how active your band is. If you're in a worship setting, there's going to be a whole lot less moving around, a whole lot less engagement. But there's still going to be some, right? We don't want to act like our shoes are nailed to the floor. If you have wireless units, that's even better. You guys can get around each other. If you don't have wireless, as everybody's sort of plugged in, you got to sort of remember in your mind, okay, when I went this way and he went that way, who went in front and who went behind, because you want to make sure that you want to make sure you don't get tied up there. If you're using wedges instead of in-ears, You want to be in front of your wedge anytime you're doing something that's sort of mission critical, right? If you've got a solo, you might want to be in front of your wedge so you can hear yourself. If you've got a particularly difficult section to play, you might want to be near your wedge so you can hear yourself. Side to side movement is way more visually stimulating than front to back movement. Front to back movement, you're sort of changing in size with perspective, right, from the people in the crowd, but side to side movement's really easy to see. Another application point, you want to interact with your bandmates. We sort of touched on this a little bit, but you want to understand what the vibe of your band is. My band's a bunch of goofballs, so we're up there joking around and clowning around with each other. Again, we're also wireless, so we're all over the place. We have a fair amount of like planned movement that is stuff that happens pretty much in the same spot of each song every night. Like, you know, in this part of this song, I know that me and the guitar player go to that side of the stage. I know that on this part of the song, maybe the female singer or bass player over here. Those are sort of planned movements. They can still be spontaneous. Maybe they're a little spontaneous in how they're executed every night, but it's sort of planned movement. We also have taught choreography, so there's some of that. But a lot of that planned movement is something that was spontaneous once, and it worked, so we just sort of kept doing it. So you have to think of your stage show very much the same way you think of your music. You know, if you have a little stab or something that goes in a song and it just popped in your head one night and you played it and it sounded good, the next night you may do that again. So it's going to be the same thing with the interactions with your bandmates. Understand that if you are on that stage and the lights are on, you're on. Okay, so don't get out of character. You know, just because you think that you're not playing something that's important, even if somebody else in your band has stepped up to take a solo, it's guaranteed that not 100% of the eyes in the place are on that person. So you got to understand, if you're on stage and the lights are on, you're in character. So just stay in character. And if it's a 4-hour show, that's hard to do. A lot of times it's exhausting, but that's that's why we make the big bucks, right? Also remember that you are on stage. Okay, stage actors and screen actors have very different approaches. Screen actors use a lot of small facial expressions to convey emotions. Those don't really work on stage. A stage actor has to use big movements, large movements of the head, turns, so there are people in front of you, but just keep in mind that the average person in a venue may be 50 feet away from you. So some of the subtle stuff doesn't necessarily translate a lot, so you want to think bigger movements, full body movements, a lot of stuff like that on stage. It sort of depends on what kind of band you're in. If you're in a hardcore band, you're not going to be smiling and clowning around a lot, right? If you're in a worship band, you're probably not going to be jumping around and waving your arms. So it does have a little bit to do with what kind of group you're in. Musically, you want to sort of push your bandmates, right? So in a stage show way, you also want to push your bandmates. You don't want to be on 11 when they're on 3, but if everybody else is on 3, maybe you go to 4 or 5 and try to bring them along with you. It's a conversation you guys can have. It's another thing that you can talk about. Hey guys, we can up our game. We can put on a better show. Here's another thing to be aware of. The way you stand says a lot about you and your attitude. Okay, if you're all casual and hanging out, that sort of lowers the energy level in the room. Don't lean up against stuff to relax or sit down or whatever. Stand with your legs a little bit apart. I mean, you'll notice sort of if you watch yourself on film. Here's another thing: you can record yourself. You can, with an iPhone, you can sit up and watch your stage show and see how you're doing. But one thing you'll notice if you do that, if you're standing with your feet together, it looks kind of casual and it looks sort of not very rock and roll. Feet apart, okay? Get your feet apart a little bit. I mean, even sometimes you're going to do that rock pose where you're all spread out, and you feel a little cheesy doing that. But the theater business is a little bit cheesy, and this is sort of theater, okay, that we're doing. So I know it seems a little awkward, but when you see the stuff on video, you're going to see that it looks good. There's a reason that on MTV these guys are all spread out and doing all that stuff. It's because it looks good. It works. All right, there's a couple more things to be aware of. You're probably going to encounter photographers, amateur and professional. For amateur photographers, I usually don't do much other than maybe mug for the camera once in a while. And in my band, we do a lot of photobombing. You see some people turn around and take their pictures in front of the stage. We'll jump down and try to get in a picture with them. People love that. They love that. They want to feel like they're part of the show. You're on stage. You're a person that people are looking at. So you've got to you got to understand that maybe that elevates you, or the desirability of you being in somebody's picture at least a little bit higher than like the average dude that's in the bar, right? With professional photographers, it's a little different, especially if you're at a private party, a wedding reception or something, and they're trying to document this event for the client. You want to make sure that you can help them get a good shot. You're playing an electric violin. It is an unusual thing. It's not something that every band has, which is really sad, but we'll work on that. So you want to make sure that they get some good shots of you. So think about framing and lighting. I know there's a lot of stuff to think about while you're up here playing, but that's, again, why we make the big bucks, right? Make sure there's not a mic stand between you and the photographer. That's going to wreck their shot. Get a good rock pose. Decide if you're going to look at the camera or not at the camera. Usually not. Sometimes yes, and occasionally you're going to mug for a professional photographer. But for the most part, you're going to look somewhere else. It looks better on their film. And I know this is going to sound a little counterintuitive, but get stationary. Sort of be in one spot, give them a couple of seconds to get a shot. Keep in mind, from their perspective, lighting on rock stages is really hard for them to deal with. The lights are changing colors, the lights are coming from different directions. It's going to take them a second to get focused in, deal with the lighting, and get their shot. If you're moving all the time, they're not going to get that shot. You don't have to stop playing or stop moving, but if you'll just slow down for a second when you see that camera coming at you, you can help them get a good shot. You may get some really cool shots out of it. Sometimes they'll give you a card at the end of the night. You can hit them up. They'll send you some cool shots. It's basically a free promo shot. You don't even have to pay for that. All you had to do was just be aware that there's a camera there and try to sort of help that person do their job. Here's another thing to talk about. Stage dress. Make sure you look the part. Fit in with your band. This depends very much on what kind of band you're in. If you're in a worship band, you're really not trying to draw attention to yourself. If you're playing in a biker band, don't show up in pleated khakis and a golf shirt. You're going to get beat up. One of the things that you learn about, you guys all have jobs, right? I mean, that's how you're paying for the internet to watch this. You know the deal. You have to dress appropriately for your job. Well, this is a job, even if it's not your main job. Here's just a couple of sort of ground rules that I use. No shorts on stage, except in very extreme situations. There's one club that we play that's down on the beach. It's in the summertime. It's packed to the gills, and they didn't have air conditioning until just this year. We actually measured it 115 degrees on our stage. I wore shorts for that gig. Okay, sue me. Normally, no shorts on stage. It looks amateur. It looks casual. I'm sure somebody's going to disagree with me, and that's your prerogative. But that's what I sort of try to do. Yes, I know about Angus Young. I'm not him. Neither are you. Footwear. Here's another thing. Again, this may be controversial, but I don't really care. I'm a Chuck Taylor guy. I wear Chuck Taylors. There have been rock stars wearing Chuck Taylors for years and years. Outside of Chuck Taylors, we're going to try to stay away from, like workout shoes, right? You don't want to wear your New Balance up on stage. Sneakers don't really scream rock and roll to me. Wear something cool, okay? It's not that hard. When my band does weddings, we dress up. We wear dress pants, a shirt with a tie, a vest. But you can do that in a way that you don't look like an undertaker, okay? Just have a little style. People hear with their eyes. They're here to see a live band. You never hear anybody say, well, I'm going to hear this live band. I'm going to see this live band. When a band hits it big, and I know a few, one of the first things they do in LA or Nashville or New York, wherever their management is they hire a style consultant to teach these guys how to dress and how to do their hair. Image matters. It's not the only thing that matters, but it matters. Just sort of be intentional about what you're wearing on stage. One last thing, and I'm not your mother, so I'm not going to preach too long on this, but go easy on the drugs and alcohol, guys, okay? The violin is hard enough to play when you're sober. It is incredibly unprofessional to get on stage and be hammered, okay? I won't lie and say I've always been sober on stage, but I know my performance is a whole lot better when I'm sober on stage, okay? This is a job. Look at it like a job. It's a fun job, no doubt. And a couple of cold ones are fine, depending on your situation. If you're in a Pentecostal church, they're probably not going to be excited about that, though there may be wine later. But take it from a guy who hasn't always made the best decisions. Stay pretty close to sober, okay? Your audience is going to appreciate it, even if they're not sober. You want people to talk about you, but in a good way. That fiddle player fell down. He was an idiot. Okay, let's pass on that. That wraps up this episode of From Classical to Radical. just a little bit of some ideas on stage presence. If you guys have thoughts, and I'm sure you do, I would love to see those in the comments section. Maybe we'll generate a little bit of a discussion, sort of help each other out here. If you guys have questions, you've got ideas for more classical radical episodes. This one actually was a suggestion from somebody sort of early on in the process. He said, hey, could you guys do something on stage presence? Yeah, sure. We've got a bunch more of these planned. There's a whole bunch of these coming still. We've got some technical stuff we're going to bring up. We've got some music theory stuff we're going to bring up, stuff on how to solo, how to improv. We've got a little bit more improv stuff to talk about. But if you guys have ideas for more episodes, we'd be glad to look at those. So thank you for tuning in. Be sure to click subscribe. So if you're on YouTube, you can find out whenever one of these new episodes comes out. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We got a website, electricviolinshop.com, and we're more than happy to help you guys with any of your electric bowed string related needs. All right, we'll see you next time. Thank you.